One of the most frustrating things as a creator, as a freelancer, as a business owner or an entrepreneur is that feeling of putting all of your hard work into something that you really, really care about and believe in, but then when you go to launch it and you put it out into market, you just hear absolute crickets. It sucks. And so you basically find yourself in a race to the bottom. And the race to the bottom is typically you competing with other products and prices which are literally just scraping the barrel. And you see other brands and influencers selling exactly the same product, but they're literally charging 5 to 10x the price, and they have what it seems to be unlimited amount of customers lining up at their door. The problem is not your product or your service. The problem is that you are selling a product or a service. Great brands don't sell products, they sell something else completely. What they sell is based on a concept I call the architecture of desire. It's all about building a world so powerful around your product or your service that pricing becomes a secondary or even a tertiary issue. And it's a framework that is built on 4 pillars. So let's dive into those 4 pillars now, and then afterwards I'm going to give you some actionable steps that you can apply for your brand today. The first pillar is identity signaling. At our core, we're signaling apes. We use symbols to communicate our status, our values, and our tribe. And a premium brand is just a highly effective modern version of a symbol. Here's a story to illustrate that. The other day we were walking around this shop and Danielle, my partner, basically went to the most expensive hand soap you could possibly imagine. It's basically 40 times the price of normal hand washing soap. And I asked Danielle, I was like, do we really need that? Like, why don't we just use the stuff that cleans our hands normally? And she responded to me something a bit differently. She was like, no, this is a quality brand. This is something that signals to other people that we value design, we value cleanliness, we also value quality in the products that we try and buy. So the thing that you have to ask yourself is, what is your product actually there to do? For example, is it just there to keep your beers cold, or is it there to signal that you're a serious outdoor adventurer who values quality? When you start selling identity, the identity that your ideal customer wants to experience, you start uncoupling your brand from the perceived price that you're offering. The second pillar is engineered scarcity. In a world of fast-paced buying, oftentimes just having that one-click checkout is the way that most people go. But if you look at the real luxury brands out there, they don't necessarily make it that easy for you to buy them. So if you think of the Hermes bag, this brand has a year-long wait list in order to get access to their bags. Now, I'm pretty sure that this brand could pump out more bags if they wanted to, but they know that if they engineer scarcity, they're going to create far more demand for the bags that they're actually offering. Is rather than you buying something, it creates a feeling inside of you that you feel like you've actually acquired it. You've had to work for it. That creates a much more robust and intense buying experience for the customer. And again, you see this in luxury branding all the time. Some of them even lock the door to the front of their shop. You got to go wait, and then they'll come in, they'll open it, and then you'll ask, hey, is that available? And they'll say, nope, it's sold out. And so what this does in you, it starts to create the sense of scarcity. And then when you do land on the product that you actually want to buy, it's like, flip, I better buy it now. And the key thing to remember here, when you have to earn something, you typically value it more. And the struggle to acquire it becomes part of the story. You haven't just bought it, but you've actually acquired it. The third pillar is sensory cohesion. A brand that feels expensive speaks with the same voice across every single touch point. If you think of the brand Christian Louis Vuitton, they are well known for having the red bottom heels. All right, all of their shoes have the red bottoms under them. And I saw a funny video the other day where this rapper who was signaling to other people that he was able to afford these shoes, you could see him walking with these red bottoms on, and he was actually flicking his heels up so people could see and take pictures of him with these red bottoms. Now, I'm not one to signal wealth like that. However, it shows very clearly how important that brand cohesion is for Louis Vuitton, because they are known for that look and feel. It's something that's synonymous with a luxury product. The same goes for any other luxury brand that you ever heard of or seen. You know, think of Ferrari, for example. What's the first thing that comes to your head? It's red with a little tinge of yellow sometimes. And this isn't something that's only used for luxury brands. Most brands that do design and branding well have a cohesive look across them, because you really want people to see your brand and go, oh, it's that brand. I recognize them. And so this creates the subconscious desire, or the subconscious understanding that your brand has sensory cohesion. And the final and most important pillar is a sense of gravitas. Now, what gravitas means is creating a narrative around your brand that allows you to punch well above your weight class. Typically, the way that we create a sense of gravitas is through the stories that we tell, because the stories that we tell are what people connect with. It's what they fall in love with. It's what they start to rally behind, and it's the spark spark that ignites movements. For example, you cannot have brand gravitas if your brand only exists on social media. Does your brand offer in-person meetups? Does it show you actually working with people in real life if that's what your brand does? Or if your brand is purely online, are you showing the actual work that you're doing with real people? Are you showing people buying your product? Are you showing social proof, testimonials, people communicating and talking about what you're doing? So a sense of gravitas for a brand just means you have more touch points that actually surround your actual core of your brand. If you see your brand as a planet and you've got all of these different brand touch points orbiting around it, attracting your customers into your actual orbit so they can eventually land on your planet, aka your brand. The sense of gravitas is something that you can start to develop and to build, but it requires you to meticulously plan and create different and multiple touch points that your customers and potential clients can actually interact with. And a basic example of this would be things like your social media platforms. They are definitely part of it. Things like your website, your long form videos and nurturing content, your emails. Do you send a gift to new customers to make them feel a sense of appreciation and give them that moment for them to actually go, wow, let me share this on my Instagram, on my stories? So a sense of brand gravitas is what actually allows you to have that David and Goliath feeling. Because oftentimes, if you get creative and you get smart, building brand gravitas and multiple brand touch points allows you to actually appear bigger and more premium than you otherwise would have. Okay, so here we're going to break down some actual steps and ideas that you can actually implement across these different pillars. So the first one being identity signaling. The job of identity signaling is for you to actually turn your offer into a status or tribe marker so price uncouples from the actual function that you're offering. Things that you can start to do here are things like an identity line, basically your client as a hero. So you might write something out like this: for my ideal client persona who want to be the kind of person who identifies with this certain status symbol. So for example, for me personally, I know that my clients really value and desire freedom as a status symbol. So I would start to talk about things like freedom and freedom-based business and fortune favors the brave. These sort of taglines that people can really grab hold of. For example, in our community, we actually communicate and call our tribe and our community Bravehearts. That's a play on our brand name that creates a sense of pride and the sense of being a part of a tribe, which creates a huge sense of perceived value around something they've just joined. The next part is actually developing some sort of badge system. So for example, you could create 2 to 3 visible markers that owners can show. It can be digital or it can be physical. Things like stickers, lock screens, wallpapers, profile frames, email badges, or merch pins. For example, in our Brave Brand course, we created a series of mobile phone wallpapers that people could download and actually just have little reminders and little things that, encourage them to step into bravery. And that was a really, really great hit and a nice touch. The third thing that you can start to do is actually rename the tiers that you offer people. So for example, if you just go option 1, option 2, option 3, that's boring. How about you do something like the Explorer or the Pro option or the Foundry option? For example, with Brave Brand, we've got the Firestarter, we've got the Supreme, and we've got the Sovereign options. So when we send proposals to clients and they see those options, they're like, holy crap, I want to be sovereign. Now, pillar 2, engineered scarcity. What you want to do here is add meaningful friction so people feel like they're actually joining and not just buying. What I want you to do now is pick one of these mechanics and stick to it for 90 days. Okay, the first one is quantity. Now, this is things like numbered editions or limited production runs or batch drops, something the clothing brand Supreme does incredibly well. The next one is time, monthly or quarterly order window or cohort intakes for services. For example, when we were running the Brave Brand cohort, we said it's limited to 20 people and we only run it every quarter. That made selling it so much easier because there was that engineered scarcity actually involved in it. Now, we weren't faking the scarcity. We actually did limit it to 20 people. But because we didn't just say, we want to get a zillion people into this, it created that sense of urgency because people wanted to belong. They didn't want to miss out, and it tapped into that sense of FOMO. The third one is access. This is where, building things like wait lists or priorities for referrers and members only variants, because people who are actually supportive of your brand and they've been around for ages, it's great to actually make them super fans, by enabling them and giving them status symbols like badges or rewards or awards or things like that nature that they can feel proud of. A few years ago, the whole world was talking about NFTs and having these digital markers. Now, that might come back in the future, I don't know. But that's kind of what was happening on the digital side of things. People would have an NFT and they would stick it in their profile on Telegram because it was signaling to other people that, hey, look, I bought this limited edition thing and this is like my collector's item. And so something to really remember with engineered scarcity is to understand never to actually fake scarcity. Because if you're running advertising, it's actually illegal and it can get you in a lot of trouble. So what you need to do is set the rules and stick to them. And then the next one is sensory cohesion. So making your brand look cohesive across the entire board and all of your brand's touch points. The first thing you can do is build a 5-sense matrix. The first one is sight. So think about things like color, your typeface, your fonts, the spacing, and the grid that your website is on. The second is touch. These are the materials, the weight, the finish, or the file or paper quality for things like service deliverables. If you're sending someone a notepad, how does that actually feel in their hand? The third is sound. So open or close sounds. The video sting when they see your logo, or a call chime. For example, when someone opens an Apple product, it actually makes a sound when you're lifting the box up. The fourth is smell or taste. Obviously only if relevant, but things like scented cards or cafe collaborations, these are just amazing things that you can do to really blow the minds of your customers. Okay, the last one is motion. So what does the motion feel like for your brand? This is especially for your website. So things like hover states, transitions, or scroll behavior all add to the brand's gravitas and the sense of sensory cohesion. So one thing I like to do with the brands we work with is having a sensory checklist. For example, if someone's designing social media posts, is this actually on brand and on tone for what we're doing? And again, having a document such as the brand guidelines is going to help you massively here. So your brand is consistent and people don't think, oh my goodness, this is just an absolute mess. Which, let's face it, most brands actually are. Okay, and the final pillar is brand gravitas. And so the way that you do that is have your 3 canonical stories locked in place. The first one being your origin story. This is where you introduce people to the villain and the guide, who's essentially you in the brand, and obviously your customer is the hero of the story and they need to relate to your origin story from that standpoint. The second one is the transformation story. Now this is where we start telling a story which is a clear before and after, because ultimately contrast is what communicates to people subconsciously. If someone is stuck in their current life situation and they are dissatisfied with that, and they see someone else who was in a similar position to them and they see the transformation they went through and what their after looks like, that creates a huge sense of desire for the product you have. And again, a huge sense of gravitas that you are someone who is qualified to serve and someone who's qualified to help them. The third one is your brand's vision and your vision for what you're doing. And it's very important for you to communicate this to the world and have a vision that is scary, hairy, and audacious. Something that other people can start to rally around. For example, if you're trying to build a physical facility that you can take people to and invite them to, you need to talk to people about that. Because again, this creates this sense of tribe and gravitas that, wow, this person is not afraid to dream big. This person is brave. All right, my friends, so that is the introduction to the architecture of desire. Now, if you want to learn how to apply this and practice and put this into practice alongside us and the rest of our community, then check out the link in the description and join our school community. Whatever it is you're trying to do, it all starts with the architecture of desire. All right, my friend, I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.